And I was able, thanks to the MBA, to look at the bigger picture, but also demonstrate the financial values I was bringing to the customer. And that was for me an eye-opener. It was like, this is what we need to do, because if we cannot find out what the value is for the customer, we shouldn't even bother our customer. Yeah. There's an old book, Dylan, Peter's Principle. I'm sure you know it. It's about someone who's doing a very good job in repairing cars, and then becomes a team leader because he's repairing so well. And instead of explaining people how to do it, he was always saying, you know what, is there a problem? Okay, everyone come here, I'll show you how it's done. And what the result was, he was still working on cars, he was still doing the job himself, and he was taking away all the others from their work.
Welcome to Road to Revenue Leadership, a show that candidly explores how hard it is to create, build, and scale world-class revenue organizations by leaders that have been there, done that, and have seen the results. My name is Dylan Mendes, founding CEO of USite, and I'm excited that you're tuning in to the podcast. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. Enjoy.
All right, well, maybe we should start by introducing Edwin Van Waes. Who is Edwin? Where do you come from? What's your short elevator pitch about yourself?
Well, there's not too much to tell about it. I'm very happily married with two lovely daughters, so that's probably the most important thing in my life. But I'm also an identical twin, so you might think you might meet me somewhere in the region of Antwerp, and I'm not saying hi, so it's not me. Then it's my brother, because we really look alike. So even at my age, we still look very much like each other. For studies, I studied engineering, but you know what? I quickly discovered I wasn't a real engineer, so I wasn't getting all the energy about designing technology. I quickly learned that I want to sell technology. We had a professor who really introduced us in selling, and that was really for me an eye-opener. So I wanted to sell technology. And I've been doing that from the beginning of my career. So I ended my career in a sales job. Yeah. And I grew further on as a direct contributor to sales leader, to even managing very large teams in my career. I've also done an MBA, which was for me also a pivotal moment in my career. But I'm sure we'll get back to that.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that, because I wanna go a little bit back. You said about the identical twin, so I have to ask. When you were younger, were there sometimes moments where you kind of interchanged position?
Well, only once.
Only once still.
We swapped classes, and you know what? All the students they knew quickly that we weren't the person that we were pretending to be. It took a bit longer for the teacher to learn about that, and then it became very tricky. But no, it was a lot of fun.
Oh gosh! And did you do it because you didn't want to do a test or of some kind, or was it just to fool and have some fun?
Yeah, fooling around, having fun. That was kind of who we are.
Definitely would do that too. Can't blame you for that. All right. Well, Edwin, super interesting. So you started, you studied engineering, but then immediately enrolled into sales. Am I right? Why
exactly.
was that? You didn't even... you immediately enrolled into sales, but why? I wouldn't think that people would want to enroll in sales in the first place.
Yeah, because first of all, I was raised in a family. My father was an entrepreneur, so I was... As a student, I helped him out. I was in contact with customers, and I really liked the customer aspect of business. So really... trying to create value for the customer was something that that pleased me. I really enjoy doing that, and that's when I said, you know what, let's go for it. There was an ask for a salesperson with a couple of years experience in the papers. It was back then, it wasn't LinkedIn, it was the papers, and I said, why not try? And I responded to it, and they hired me. So to my big surprise, they hired me because I didn't have any experience. Just besides helping out my father in his business. But I was hired, and since then I've been in sales for the rest of my career.
Ever since. Lovely. All right, well then I will have to ask you, what is your road to revenue leadership? Can you maybe kind of explain a little bit about your career until now? And if there are any stories, any anecdotes you would like to share, feel free to do so. Otherwise, maybe I might do myself.
Yeah, so I've been working for many large American companies, and I was very lucky to work with many of the leaders in the market. Just to name a few: IBM, SAS Institute, Salesforce, all leaders in their domain. So that was I was very happy, and quickly, I think already after 5 years, I became a manager of a team. And there's a couple of things that I learned that are really important. So it's all for me. It all starts whether whenever you join a new company, it's about creating an environment of trust. Yeah, without trust, there's nothing you can do. If people are not free to speak openly and trust each other, that's an issue. And trust also helps you to make people accountable. What do I mean with that? Trust makes you capable of empowering people because you trust them, and if you empower them, you can make them accountable. So that's absolutely key for me. Also, walk the talk, as I say, lead by example. I've seen too many managers that say you have to do this, and they behave completely the opposite. So that is absolutely what you need to avoid. And finally, that's something that I learned over the last couple of years. Everyone wants to be a leader and a coach or a mentor, but you need to learn to manage also, and that's absolutely critical if you in your career if you're managing teams.
Very interesting. I'm sure we will deep dive into some of the topics you just mentioned, but I'm also always curious to understand the person behind your story. And so maybe to start off from the start of your professional career, what was the ambition? What was your goal back then? Because you had some engineering background, but then moved into sales. So was that because you wanted to have some impact? Or what was the ambition?
Yeah, so my ambition wasn't very big. I was raised in an environment, and I was learned to work hard and stay humble. And that really was my guide in my career. So I wasn't taking a job thinking about, in 5 years, I want to be the manager. That was absolutely not my goal. My goal when I took a job was to be successful in that job. I wanted to be successful and demonstrate that I was a good hire. And I knew, and I was told by my parents, if you do well, everything will follow. So the career will follow, the salary will follow, everything will follow. But I was always focused on being successful in the job I was hired for.
Mm-hmm. So always giving 110%, didn't matter what it was.
Yeah, for sure. I'm raised in the time where hard working was absolutely the basics of everything that you do. So yeah, the 110% is probably is underestimating what it really was. Yeah.
Do you feel that now times have changed? That maybe people have softened a little bit?
It's not softened. I think the time has changed, and people are more aware that there's other things besides work. I think I still come from the generation where, if you go for work, you give it your all. And I'm not saying the newcomers are not giving it their all, but they understand better the balance between giving it all at work, but also giving it all at home. And I'm not suggesting that I didn't give my all in the family and at home, but I was working long days, long hours, and I'm happy to see that the youngsters today want to defend themselves and take some more personal time, which is absolutely needed, because if you see the stress that's been put on people nowadays is very, very big. So it's good that they try to defend that balance for themselves.
Yeah, I feel you. Especially post-COVID, everything is digital. You can be asked of help at any moment. So kind of defending yourself on your time and your privacy kind of makes sense. Maybe to also look back at your career, have you had some false beliefs about what you should do or should believe or, whatever it could be that you now don't think as true as anymore?
Well, let me give you an example. As a manager, when I started to become a manager after probably 5 years in my career, I wanted to be friendly to everyone. And I found it very important that I was, people find me sympathetic and they wanted to work with me, and they thought I was a nice guy. And you know what? I quickly learned as a manager, that's not what you need to look for. You need to be treating people all the same, but you need to be clear also. Yeah. So you need to be a manager in the first place. You need to manage your business and the people and make them better. And that doesn't always come with just being friends. Yeah. I've learned that through the career, if you build friendships, that's a bonus. but you should not aim for it. And that was a key lesson for me.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, what does it mean to be friendly to you? Just to understand, what was it like to trying to be friendly to you, and how has it then changed? What was your behavior? How was your behavior different when you understood that maybe it's not the thing that I should be pursuing?
Well, probably it's about keeping a little bit more distance. If you get too close, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but if you go to a pub with your team or with some of your team members and you have a long night of fun and drinks, and the next day you need to have a rather tough discussion on performance, that's a mismatch. That's a mismatch. So it's about, of course, you need to stay friendly. I'm not saying that you need to be an unpolite manager, absolutely not. But you should not become friends or not seek to become friends. If you become friends, that's again what I said. It's a bonus, but it's not something you should be looking for.
Yeah, exactly. But interesting you say that, because I would also think that the company culture has a big element. I mean, is a big element when it comes to that.
Absolutely, I agree.
All right. Well, maybe the opposite of having false beliefs in your career. Were there also elements, that kind of accelerated, maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously, the achievements that you have had along your career?
Oh yes, of course. So first of all, I had many managers, and I've always was eager to learn from my managers, whether it were good managers or lesser good managers. I always tried to learn what to copy, what to repeat, and what certainly not to do. So that was a great lesson. But I think a pivotal moment in my career, and I think I mentioned it before, was my MBA. And the reason I say it, I was an engineer, as I told you before, not a real engineer. I studied engineering, I graduated, but I wasn't feeling like an engineer. And the technology, although I was very interested in it, I was not the person that was going to design the technology. So when I did the MBA, it gave me a very much bigger picture on what you should do with your customers and the business that you're running. So in fact, as a seller, because at that time I was still selling, I was a direct contributor. The MBA gave me a broader perspective of business and helped me to become a value seller for my customers. So instead of being a feature seller, which I was because I was selling technology, I became more and more a value seller where I was focused on the value of the customer. And I was able, thanks to the MBA, to look at the bigger picture, but also demonstrate the financial values I was bringing to the customer. And that was for me an eye-opener. It was like, this is what we need to do, because if we cannot find out what the value is for the customer, we shouldn't even bother our customer. Yeah. So it all starts with the value for the customer. So that was absolutely important for me, and it helped me in every step in my career, whether it was as an account manager, as a sales director, or even as a CEO. It helped me focusing on the value for the customer.
Yeah, very interesting. When was it exactly that you did this MBA?
It was at the Flanders Business School. It's now called Flanders Business School. It was related to Northwestern and Kellogg's in the US. So it was really interesting. They had a good relationship with the American school that was known in the market. And really, it helped me a lot. And I can only advise people to do such an extra master after the...
And have you had some years of experience before going and to Flanders Business School doing the MBA?
Yeah, if I reflect, it was probably too short. They were very strict that you had to have 5 years of experience.
Okay.
And in the beginning, I thought, why do I need to wait that long? But I completely understand them because you get things explained that you haven't experienced yet. And then it makes it hard because it tends to become very theoretical. And if you have the experience, it becomes really practical.
100%. I 100% agree with that statement. When I look back at my degree, because I did business engineering at the KU Leuven, but I had no context or whatsoever to apply it in. So I couldn't tell you the difference in value it would have if I would do the degree now compared to when I was still a student with no actually professional occupation. So I 100% feel you. Maybe also a question related to this. Was it you that came up with the idea of maybe I should do an MBA? Or did a mentor come to you and say, you know what, Edwin, I think it's good if you maybe enroll to an MBA?
No, I think it was myself because I had a hunger and I felt that mismatch between being a real engineer and being with customers and talk about business values and that kind of stuff. I felt that much, and I was eager to learn. And yeah, there's many things that you then can go do. But I heard about the MBA. I started to investigate, and I said, this is exactly what I want to do, because it will give me perspectives on finance, on HR, on all the different aspects of running a business. And that's what I wanted to learn.
Yeah, lovely. All right. So you kind of touched on it already, but how has this then changed your approach to selling, to be on the field, to also maybe look to the progression in terms of your career? How has this kind of influenced that?
Yeah, so I feel that everyone needs to make an evolution as a seller. Yeah, and there's different types of sellers. There's the what I call the hard sellers, or the transactional sellers. There's the feature sellers. There's the consultative sellers. There's the provocative seller, and then at the end, value seller. I'm not pretending that everyone needs to become a value seller, although nevertheless, I'm saying that everyone should be focused on the value of their customer. That's different. But becoming a value seller is a very broad idea. And there's probably a place for every type of seller, depending on the business you're in. If you're just selling one very specific product, well, you could be the feature seller, yeah. But there's always pitfalls in every of those types. If you look at the hard seller or the transactional seller, I've seen too many where it's all about ego. They only think about themselves. It's about me. I want to get an order. I'm not thinking about the customer. If you look at the feature seller, could be good for a very specific solution, but I've seen too many. There's a good expression in English that says, when you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, sometimes they're not capable in differentiating the needs of the customer, from one to the other customer. And that could be a pitfall. If you look at consultative seller, there's been a lot of documentation about consultative selling, whether that's absolutely what you want to be. And it can be very powerful, although also there I've seen sellers being very good consultative, not sellers, So they have been consulting customers all the way. They got the energy about explaining all the time to the customer what they think they should do. And they've got one thing: we're also in the business of selling, So it needs to be a win-win for the company you work for and the company you serve.
Right.
So that's for consultative selling. And then the next step you could read in the literature was then, let's become a provocative seller, where you dare to say to your customer, Mr. Customer, I think you're wrong. You should not do it that way. I believe you should do it this way. And that can be very, very powerful. But also there, I've seen sellers completely deviating from what it really meant with a transactional seller. It was more like becoming an arm wrestling game, where they wanted to win and show the customer that they knew more about their business and about everything they had to do. So that was also dangerous. And then, of course, there's the value selling. And the value selling is all about focusing on the value for the customer. And if you do that well, you as a seller gets a lot of energy, but what is even better, your customer, your contact is getting a lot of energy, because he sees and he understands the value that you're bringing and how you're helping their business forward. And that is very satisfying as a seller, very satisfying.
Yeah. I 100% see what you mean. Maybe because you also said that you had some hunger when you had not done the MBA yet, but you still, I guess, had the intention to help your customer the best you can. And so you saw the MBA and thought, I will enroll. And so that's hunger kind of already, give a direction or give an idea of the work ethic you maybe had and you still have. But can you maybe kind of explain, what was your work ethic? What is your mindset when it comes to work and being on the work field? What can you share about that?
Well, I spoke about things like trust, and that's all important. But it all starts with treating people with respect. You wanna make sure that you treat people such that they get the energy that they need to come to the office every day. I always say, be hard on the facts, be soft on the people. I'm not saying that by treating people with respect, you cannot be very direct and even sometimes pass on a tough message. But it needs to be done in a respectful way. So that is absolutely important. If you're not capable of doing that, there's an expression in Dutch, I'm not sure whether it works in English, but if you, as a doctor, you're too soft, eventually the wounds will start to smell. Yeah, that's an expression in Dutch. And I kind of like that. Sometimes you need to be able to pass on a tough message, but the mismatch is often that managers believe that passing a hard message needs to be done in a hard way. No, it can be done. You can pass a hard message in a respectful way, and that's often forgotten, which for me is a shame.
Yeah, I think it also just starts in the position of the leader, right? Also, just you taking yourself, criticism, feedback, being vulnerable. No?
You touch upon a very good point, Dylan. If you want to create this environment of trust and respect, you need to, again, lead by example. If you're not vulnerable yourself and you don't dare to say, you know what, I'm open for feedback. You can tell me whatever you want. And you know what? Sometimes I don't know the answer to that. Setting yourself vulnerable helps your team to be vulnerable, and that's kind of the basis of respect to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to even think of this a little bit broader, I think when you look at the world today, everything is moving at such a high speed. You almost need to have a culture of innovation to be able to follow that pace. And so I think that, I mean, especially as the leader, you need to kind of, show how things should be going. And I think that accepting yourself, feedback, criticism, always questioning yourself about your current approach, about where we should going, just you doing that, it's just showing the path for the rest. And I think it looks like a small, tiny thing, but it's also just to really having that innovation culture. What's your thought on that?
It's absolutely right, everything that you say, but I think there's an addition to that. It's also about, so if you create this environment, it's also about giving people the chance to fail. And how do you give them the chance to fail is about empowering them. And that comes again with the trust, yeah? So create that environment of trust, empower them, and then make them accountable. And I have a story I can tell about that. When I joined a new company and inherited a team of sellers, the former manager was moving aside and was going to do something else in the company. And when you enter a team like that or a company like that, they're already in closing mode because there's another quarter to be closed or whatever. So there was a lot of stress going on. And the former manager came to see me and said, Edwin, your biggest deal is not going to happen because you should not trust your salesperson. Is not capable of doing this. So you should step in and you should bring home this deal. And I was kind of shocked with that because I said, you know what, that's not how I want to work with people. So I went to see the seller and I had an open debate and I said, this deal, what do you think about it? He felt rather confident and I said, you know what, this is an important deal for you, for me, for everyone in the company. So we need to win this. So I need to trust you that you can bring it home. And he convinced me, asked him all the questions about how he was progressing on the deal. And I felt he was doing the right stuff. Yeah. So I said, you know what, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to be here as your mentor and coach. Whenever you need me, I'll step in whenever you ask me, but I'll let you do. Yeah. So, but I trust we bring this home. And of course, I followed up every week and I asked him the questions, but I wasn't telling him what to do. I just was checking. Over the course of those 2-3 months when we were closing the deal, that former manager came to see me another 2 times. And the last time was very direct. It was like, you know what, you're making a big mistake. This is never going to happen. The seller is not capable. I wasn't distracted by that message. I kept on giving the empowerment to the seller and giving my full support. And at the end, that person won the deal. And that was such an important moment for that person. Why? Because he, at that moment, became the star of the company because he won a very important deal. But also, he felt as a person, as a seller, he was successful and could be very successful, and he had the right approach. So from that moment, that person became a really great, confident seller, and even became a manager later on because he was given the trust, he was empowered, and that's when he felt he was also accountable making the difference. And that was for me a big moment that really demonstrated that giving trust to people, setting this environment of respect, empowering, making people accountable was absolutely key.
Yeah, I love such examples, and thanks for sharing. Because we have also had conversations like this inside the community, where indeed when it comes to, I will call it now sales coaching, you really have to keep yourself from being the super sales as the sales leader. Because you have had a lot of experiences, you have closed big deals before, but if you want your people to grow, it's to them to maybe even fail the deal. And that's the risk that you have to take as a coach, as a leader. But in your example, I think it illustrates just the way that, or the impact that it could have. Very interesting.
There's an old book. There's an old book, Dylan, Peter's Principle. I'm sure you know it. It's about someone who's doing a very good job in repairing cars, and then becomes a team leader because he's repairing so well. And instead of explaining people how to do it, he was always saying, you know what, is there a problem? Okay, everyone come here, I'll show you how it's done. And what the result was, he was still working on cars, he was still doing the job himself, and he was taking away all the others from their work because they all had to look at him how he was repairing cars. So that's kind of the Peter's Principle. You get promoted to a level where you probably are incapable. So you need to be sure that you let people do their own thing and not bother with their responsibility.
Yeah, I 100% feel you. And yes, it's a risk, I guess. It's about losing control, but it's also about the trust and believing in your people. So it comes with that. But I think we make a good transition to also the element that you mentioned earlier about that people, whenever they come in a leadership position, they like to become a coach, but forget also the basics of being a manager. And you mentioned that in a previous call. And so I really want to bring this up also in this discussion because I thought it was very interesting. Can you maybe share your thoughts about the topic and also, why you think of that?
Well, if you ask 100 people leaders, and I was in a room just this week with 60 leaders, and when you ask them the question, who wants to be a manager or who wants to be a leader and a mentor and a coach, and probably all 100 or 99% say we want to be the leader, we want to be the coach, we want to be the mentor, and they definitely don't want to be the manager, because manager is often seen as micromanagement, and that's something completely different, and I'll come back on that. So my strong belief is that if you want to be a strong leader, mentor and coach, you need to be a manager first. And what do I mean with that? Whenever it's not in your career, it doesn't mean like you need to start your career as a manager and then evolve towards a leader. No, it's whenever you got into a new job, into a new company, you got a team, well, you need to be a manager first. And why do I say that? There's a couple of things that you need to do as a manager. Yeah. So you need to set the basics, make things very clear from the beginning so that there's no surprises later on. You need to set up a monitoring tool, like you need to be able to manage your business. You cannot be a good leader if you don't know your business. And then you need to introduce what I call a drumbeat, like a sequence of events that's very clear from the beginning for everyone what you expect. And that sequence of events will give you the progress of your business and will give you visibility on the progress of your business. And if you get that in order, that's the basics, then you can become a real leader, because you will free up time. And if people say, you know what, this is micromanagement, I think it's the opposite, because if I'm doing a drumbeat and I'm doing a forecast with my team every week, 20 minutes each, yeah, that person knows that during that 20 minutes, we're going to talk about numbers. Yeah. And I'm not going to call that person at 7 at night saying, you know what, I have a report to give to my CEO, to my board. Can you help me out with the numbers? That's not going to happen, because we have those moments when we talk. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And all the other moments we can free up for real focus on the business, on our customers, on developing ourselves. So that's absolutely critical.
Yeah, it's also about setting the right expectation, I think. Micromanagement is definitely something else that nobody wants. I feel the negative connotations that you have with being a manager. Maybe that sounds, maybe people make direct relationships with micromanagement, but I feel you. Maybe,
but it's often forgotten, Dylan. If I just quickly can talk a little bit further on that. So it's often forgotten. People are so focused on becoming a leader that, as you say, it gives managing a bad connotation. But it should not be. It's just about, again, treating people with respect. And how do you treat people with respect? By making things clear from the beginning. This is what I expect. So let's make that clear. This is, what do you expect? Let's find this way of working, and then we can focus on the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that maybe in some way, when you think of a manager, it's a person that brings in negative news, that will be providing criticism, that will, look for feedback to improve, and that maybe gives an element of fear in some way. And I think that the leader or the coach is the person that will look behind the person, and that will, try to, all right, what is it exactly that you want? How can we create an environment to exactly fit what you want? And while that, might be to some extent kind of true, I think that a leader, and you probably agree even more with that, is a manager by definition anyways. You have to give that criticism, that feedback, to create that environment.
Yeah, for sure. But I cannot repeat enough, for me, the 3 things that a manager needs to do. Yeah, do the basics, tell you what you expect, what's the behavior that you expect, what are your mandatory meetings, what you expect from a forecasting call, how do you want them to use tools like the CRM, that kind of stuff. Those are the basics. Yeah, the monitoring, it's about making sure that you monitor what you expect your team to do. Yeah, so define the role first. What's the role of your team? And in the sales team, for me, it's very simple. I call it CPC. You're either creating pipeline, you're progressing pipeline, or you're closing pipeline. If you look at a seller's job, that's kind of a good summary. Yeah. So set up a monitoring system that really manages that. So it's about making sure that you can monitor the progress, the creation of the pipeline, and see how you're closing. And there's many ways that you can do that. You can have pipeline reports, you can have good forecasting reports, and all that kind of stuff. So set up all that. And then the drumbeat, again, I mentioned it before, is really critical. If I say in the beginning of the year, when I distribute quotas to the sales team, and I say, now in the beginning of the year, I want you to build a plan on how you will reach that quota. That's the first thing. People know that every beginning of the year, we need to build that. We do a quarterly review of that plan. They know that up front. And we do a weekly forecast, those 20 minutes I spoke about. Well, as a seller, my agenda is now very clear. I know exactly what is expected, and I can now really focus on my customer, you see. So that's what we want to achieve with that as a manager.
Mm-hmm. But how can you then still try to balance those 2 responsibilities of being a manager and being a coach? How would you try to find that balance in it?
Well, very good question. So if you got that in place, and that shouldn't take too long, it can go very quickly, but it's about respecting each other and setting expectations. Then it's about becoming that leader, and the way you do that is there's twofold. So it's first of all creating this environment of trust, and then it's making also your team members better. I think as a coach, as a mentor, as a leader, that's what you want to do. Yeah. Creating an environment of trust is really important, and there's often misunderstandings of trust. Trust is really based on behavior, should be based on behavior. So if you look at, it's not a feeling, yeah? If you talk about trust, it's not a feeling, it's really, you look at behaviors and that creates trust, yeah? And the strange thing is that many managers, they judge their teams based on behavior, but they judge themselves on the good intentions that they have. And that's a big pitfall, yeah? So you need to be careful with that. Trust is really based on behavior. And you looked as a manager, you looked like that the same way. But trust is also important because, and I think I mentioned it a little bit before, if you create trust in an environment, that means that you take away the fear of conflict. People are free to speak openly and they're not fearing the conflict. Because if there's fear of conflict, you create artificial harmony. And artificial harmony is the worst thing that can happen in a company because it creates a lack of accountability and therefore inattention to results. Yeah. So that's trust is the basics of everything.
What do you mean with artificial harmony?
Artificial harmony, if we're working as a team, but not really operating as a team. You know what? We kind of tolerate each other, but I don't dare to say, you, Dylan, I think you're not doing the right things because you promised you were going to do this and you didn't. I don't dare to speak out to you because there's a fear of conflict. There's no trust between us. So creating that environment of That's where the vulnerability again comes across. Is you need also to dare to say, you know what, you're right. I didn't do that well, but I'll make it happen now. So but that debate is an environment where everyone makes everyone better, and that is absolutely critical. No, it's also about making teams better. So it's not just creating the trust environment. As a coach, as a mentor, you need to help your team to become better. And I think we mentioned a couple of things. Is allowing for failure, because you can learn a lot from your failures, from your errors, from your faults. You can learn a lot about that. But it's also about helping them. In many cases, it's about in the sales team. It's about making them from a hard seller or feature seller, helping them to become a true value seller. That's kind of the role as a manager is going to be important to make your team better. Because if people feel that they are getting better every day, they're going to be happy also. People want to learn. They want to be working for a successful company, and they want to learn every day.
100%. I 100% feel that. You are now an executive.
I can just mention, Dylan. Sorry, Dylan, I interrupted you.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to mention, because I spoke a lot about trust. There's perhaps, if you allow me, there's 2 books I can recommend people to read. There's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team from Patrick Lencioni. That's all about the trust, creating the trust environment. And then the aspect of trust is behavior. It's based on behavior. It's not a feeling. That is a book from Stephen Covey, The Speed of Trust. So those are really 2 good books for people to read.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. We'll make sure to add these 2 books in the show notes. Anyway, you are now an executive coach, assisting mostly CEOs or any type of leaders. That's kind of right. Am I right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
What are the contexts that you mostly get in contact with, or what are the issues that you mostly see, and that's why then you are entering the company?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic job I'm doing. Yeah, so I've been working for these large American companies, and I'm now assisting in many cases startups or scale-ups that really need to make the next move. So typical companies that are doing a 4 million euro revenue, and they need to make in the next 12 months 10 million. So that kind of growth numbers are in the plans, are requested by their investors, that kind of stuff. So when I help those customers, first of all, I'm very pleased with what I see. There's a lot of quality in Belgium. It's unbelievable. Companies with a drive, with a passion, with everything is needed to become successful. But what strikes me all the time is that with just small little changes, you can help them to propel their growth. Yeah. They've been very successful because they have, for example, a great product or whatever, and they've been growing. They've been growing like 30-40% a year, but suddenly their plan says you need to double or you need to triple. Yeah, unicorns. Yeah, they need to triple a couple of years one after the other.
Go make that happen.
But that is something that. Yeah, it doesn't happen like that, So that's when you need to get you need to operationalize some of the stuff, and also in sales, you need to kind of operationalize the way you approach your customers. And I mentioned how you do that. It's also about following up your team with the basics, with the monitoring tools, and with the drumbeat. You need to get all that things in place. So that it's scalable. Your business becomes scalable, which is absolutely important when you're a startup scale up.
Okay, very interesting. So, are you mostly working with founders, or is it new CEOs that are being introduced in the company and they have to make it kind of happen, and that's where your expertise also comes in good place?
So I have close contacts with a couple of investors, great investors in Belgium. So obviously. They sometimes come to me and say, Edwin, we have invested in a company. Can you just contact them and see how you can help them? So that's sometimes how it starts. But if not, it's directly with the CEO of the company and seeing how I can help. And you know what? the CEOs in Belgium, they are very, very smart people, very, very smart people. And not because their knowledge only, but also because they know if we surround ourselves with experts in the different domains, we can propel our business. And they're doing that very, very well.
Yeah, I feel you. I think we are very...
And I'm lucky because I can do this. Sorry, Dylan. I can do that in different industries. I've been doing this in all the industries, not just in the software business or in the IT business, in all businesses, and that makes it for me very rewarding and very interesting.
Yeah, that's a nice thing to say, and I think I feel you. I think in Belgium we are a very modest community, and so I can imagine that even the smartest people would always like to be surrounded by even smarter people, making us actually strong organization. Unfortunately, sometimes working on smaller scales than we should be working at, but I guess that's also the cuteness of working in a country such as Belgium. To link a little bit back, maybe
absolutely.
to what you said earlier about, you shouldn't be too much of a coach in the first place, but also a manager. How do you see that translated into those interventions that you do at those different companies?
Well, it really helps. So often these are people that understand. Typical, the CEO has been managing their team directly, and they got up to 4 or 5 million euros, something like that. If they want to grow, they also need to put a structure in place. So typically, they're looking for a new sales director or a VP sales or that kind of stuff. Yeah, it takes a while before you get that person on board. So what I'm doing is I'm helping those companies really to already set a structure in place and a kind of modus operandi in place, such that when a new person comes, that work has been done, and that person can start becoming that leader as quickly as possible, because many of the basics have been implemented already. So I really help companies to implement those basics and kind of coach the team while they're waiting for the new VP sales to arrive.
Right. If they do, a revenue, if they have a revenue of 4 to 5 million, I suppose they already have a decent team they work with. But I can also imagine, especially when, you come from the startup and you grow now to a scale-up phase, that you used to be a very operational person, but then all of a sudden you kind of have to be the leader, the person at the steering wheel. And that also retransform really the responsibilities, the work that you do every day. Do you see that also with those people that you work with?
Yes. So first, well, you need to also coach the CEO a little bit, and I don't want to pretend that I know it all, but you need to help them because they've been so on top of their own business in the very much details. But if they want to grow, they need to make sure that business can scale. So they need to be able to step. They need to go up in their role. Yeah, they can't be in all the details anymore. So it's also about coaching them how to do that and how to give kind of this empowerment to other people in the company. That is absolutely critical. Now, I gave the example of 4 million euro companies. I've been assisting companies that are doing like between 50 and 100 million also. Yeah. So, but what I recognize is that in many companies, and that's why I was lucky to work for these large American companies like Salesforce, for example, there's a lot to be learned about professionalizing sales teams because companies like Salesforce, they've done that for many years. They know how to do it, and it's a science, It's not like you need to reinvent the wheel. Managing teams, especially sales teams, is kind of a science. If you know how to do it, you can implement it fairly quickly.
100%. I think that sales leadership is part science, part art, but when it comes to sales management, I think we can fairly say it's a lot of science in the first place.
Yeah, true. And that's the difference, again, between a leader and manager. I do believe that you're kind of born as a leader or a coach.
Really?
And
Interesting.
that's who you are because, that's who you are because it's leading and mentoring and coaching teams has a lot to do with your personality. Managing teams is, as we said, is a science. You can really define what needs to be done to manage the team. Yeah, to do the managerial aspect of your job. But then being a leader, there's a big difference between the successful and the less successful leaders, and it has all to do with their personality. So that's a bit more who you are than the managerial aspect of it. So that's great, because we said in the beginning that there's many people that want to be the leader, and they probably want to be the leader because they have it in their personality to be the leader, and they forgot the managerial aspect. But that should not be a burden. They can learn it, because it's, as we said, it's a science. It's not something that you got in you as in your personality.
I 100% agree with that. All right. Well, Edwin, I feel we could talk hours on that topic, on that subject. And especially, I'm sure you have actually much more interesting anecdotes coming from your experience. Maybe that's going to be for next time. But let me first thank you for your time, for the great stories you've shared, the explanations. If people want to find out more about Edwin, about you, where would you like to send them to?
Yeah, they can go to my LinkedIn profile. I think all my contact details are in there. My email, everything is there, so they can contact me the best way they like, whether it's my telephone, my email, or whatever.
All right. So for the
it's
audience,
all on my LinkedIn profile.
Edwin Van Waes. Edwin, I have one last question for you. A question I ask all my guests, and it goes as follows. So if Edwin would be a brand, what would it stand for?
That's a very good one. I think I'm probably going to repeat what I've been saying all the way. A person that treats others with respect and is eager to help people to grow and become better, and knows and understands that he needs to learn himself also. So that's kind of humble and respectful. I think that's what I want to be. I'm probably not always, and respectful. I'm probably not always like that, but I hope most of the times I'm like that.
Yeah, but I definitely love it. The humble but respectful challenger, Edwin Van Waes. All right. Well, thank you so much, Edwin,
thank you for
having you on the show.
I remember that.
Wishing you all the best, man.
You're very welcome.
That's it. We have once again reached the end of an episode. I just really appreciate you all spending the time. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Until next week with a fresh new episode.